the cross-industry enterprise panel discussion on cybersecurity technologies and challenges 2020. Automated hacking, deepfakes, and other cyber threats of 2020. Cybersecurity evolution meets 5G revolution, rise of the machines, the impact of coronavirus on cybersecurity, tackling the cybersecurity skill gaps, and much more. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have with us our panelists, Francisco Castillo, SVP CIO, Maynilad Water Services Inc., Philippines. Dr. Francisco is known as the water concessionaire for the west area of Manila's greater metropolitan area. While he was previously connected to a major multinational IT consulting firm as managing consultant for Asia Pacific, where he worked for over 12 years in various capacities. In 2013, he was named Outstanding ASEAN CIO by the IDG Group and also voted as the Best ASEAN CIO 2016 during the ASEAN IT Strategy Forum in Singapore. Also, our next panelist is Venkatesh Subramaniam, CISO, Olam International Singapore. A seasoned business-oriented security professional with over 26 years of management and diverse security experience in critical sectors like finance and telecom. He's somebody who combines strong educational and professional background to assess, plan, as well as build and operate strategic security programs and secure critical infrastructure globally. We'll also be joined soon by Shaik J. Ahmed, Head of Information Technology, Renault, Nissan Technology and Business Center, India. Well, a cybersecurity leader and armed force veteran with over 25 years of rich experience in defense and corporate sectors in cyber operations, digital security, and cyber threat management. While Shaik early in his career was associated with the Indian Air Force, and currently he's the Head of Information Security, Renault, Nissan Technology Business Center, India, chair member as well of National Cyber Defense Research Center. We're also joined by Dr. Viktor Polic, the Chief Information Security Officer, International Labour Organization, Switzerland. Well, Dr. Viktor is a Chief Information Security Officer at the International Labour Organization, which is a specialized agency of the United Nations. Viktor's 25 years of career in IT spans different roles across financial, humanitarian, standardization and development, multilateral, public sector organizations like ITU, UNCC, UNHCR. Viktor conducts research in cryptography, data protection regulation, and risk management. And this entire panel discussion is going to be moderated by Ohl-lum, the founder and CEO, Hungry Workhorse Institute of Digital Transformation, Philippines. Well, Ray Luktu is a digital transformation thought and action leader, a sought-after public speaker and a trainer, and an accomplished educator and a business columnist. He has engaged with several companies and organizations on digital transformation and innovation, helping them in strategy and execution. Well, ladies and gentlemen, now it is time to pass on this incredible panel discussion over to the viewers. Thank you so much. Over to you, Francisco, and Dr. Viktor, Ronaldo, Venkatesh, and Shaik as well. Over to you, Ronaldo, for taking it forward.
Thank you, Pavana. So welcome, panelists. Welcome. It is indeed an honor to be here with some of the most esteemed technologists and practitioners in the world. Now, COVID-19 has been truly probably the biggest disruptor that has happened in our lifetime. And we will talk about cybersecurity technologies and challenges in 2020, and primarily as it relates to the global pandemic we're seeing right now. Now, there's a WHO report, gentlemen, recently that cyber attacks increased fivefold in WHO itself. Right? So because the unscrupulous people are taking advantage of the situation. Now let me throw in the first question to Dr. Francisco Castillo. So welcome. Now, what is the impact of coronavirus in cybersecurity? There's been reportedly increase in cyber attacks. And what are the risks companies facing right now in this pandemic as it regards cyber security?
Well, I think one of them you mentioned already. There's been an increase. I'm assuming for two reasons. One is there's more opportunity, and second, there's less money is moving in the world, so it's very tempting to resort to cybercrime, right? Um, and related to this, I mean, a lot of people are working from home, and that means that working from home has its challenges. I can expound on that later on, but basically, you're not behind the perimeter of defense, behind your firewall, your IDS, and it's not the normal way in which companies operate. If you allow also employees to use their own device, that even poses even more challenges, right? Even connecting to your house Wi-Fi has its challenges by itself, right? Because you don't, I mean, most people wouldn't know whether their Wi-Fi and router is properly set up in a secure way, right? So I'd leave it at that. Maybe later on we can discuss a little more, but those are some of the challenges.
All right. Yes. So indeed, there's a lot of challenges now. That's why, I'm conscious of all of these, devices connected to the internet. Let me ask Venkatesh. So Venkatesh, well, you've been exposed to, some global and, regional, cybersecurity practices. So with this, risk increasing because of COVID, what's going to be the strategies of companies and CISO practitioners like you? What are the strategies and priorities that CISO practitioners would undertake right now in these days?
Thank you, Ray. The security strategy itself would not change radically, but a couple of areas would get bumped up in priority as they need more attention and focus. One of them is to have an appropriate security framework for cloud adoption in case the organization does not have one. And even if the organization has one, it is important to revisit that security framework because a lot has changed over the years in the last couple of years with respect to the cloud service providers. And as a part of this, it is important for the CISO to have a seat in the table when discussions are made around what is it that needs to be migrated to the cloud. It is a function of the risk appetite of the organization, but the CISO should have a seat at the table while this discussion is happening. And then the next step is depending on the context of the organizations may decide certain things like would go to a SaaS kind of a platform, and certain things would go into an IaaS PaaS kind of a platform. Why I'm making this distinction is because the ownership from an organization's perspective is different in each of the cases. If it's a SaaS kind of a model that the organization is adopting, then the cloud provider takes control of a lot of stuff. But still, the organization would need to focus on a few areas, and that would be things like access control, data discovery, data loss prevention. Now, if you come to the IaaS PaaS kind of a model, then it is a different ball game where, in addition to what I just said, you would also have to be wary about the configurations that you're making in the cloud and the overall cloud security posture management. So that is why that security framework and have a thorough review of the model is very critical. So that is one area. And the second area is I concur with what Francisco said regarding this work from home. The CISO has to be prepared for a permanent work from X. That's what I'm going to call it, WFX, work from anywhere, from any device. could be a model that may come into play, at least for certain employees in the organization, because the organization has already tasted success in long-term people working from home. And in many cases, people may not be having company devices. So the organization would come back to the CISO and say that, well, if it has worked so well for over this last 6 months, why not on a permanent basis we do this for certain sections of employees so that we can save on real estate and also save on providing company assets to them. So the CISO has to be prepared with an approach as to how he's going to take care of the risks of working from home, which actually Francisco did allude to a number of areas like infections from home machines, data governance, like if you're using home machines, your home network when you're connecting. So these would be some of the risks that you have to be cognizant about and be prepared.
Thank you, Venkatesh. Security framework. No? So reviewing your security framework. Now, let me jump to Dr. Victor. So, Dr. Francisco and Venkatesh spoke about work from home. So a lot of employees now are using remote video conferencing platforms. All of these new technologies for work from home. And there's already an intersection of AI and cybersecurity. And this is where automated hacking, deep fakes are coming in. So how do you prepare your organization right now, with all of these technologies? Even hacking is becoming high tech, right? So how do companies prepare, and what's your advice for practitioners like yourself?
Thank you, Reynaldo. It's been a very challenging period of time for all of us practitioners and professionals in this area. And of course, we're observing advances of our adversaries continuously. That's part of our duty. But being adaptive to these different dynamic challenges that are rising with, for example, pandemic, COVID-19 situation that is hitting the world globally. So hitting all of our partners, all of our constituents, our staff, of course, customers. At the same time, that's probably a challenge that very few of us have thought about in advance. Of course, in different regions of the world, people were more prepared than in others, and only those of us who are acting globally can actually be aware of this different maturity of the process and preparedness for this. Obviously, with the advancement of artificial intelligence, we have seen quite a number of breakthroughs. Just to name a few, like OpenAI launching their GPT-3 famous natural language processing artificial intelligence machine, which has actually quite progressed with concrete examples on creating artificial content. In deepfakes, we have a lot of progress also with generative adversarial networks, GANs, basically commodifying them. So being available to adversaries as much as also at the same time to professionals like ourselves, that opens up paths to types of threats. Now, are we ready for these new types of threats? This is actually what we are discussing at this conference. So I think that traditionally looking into the OODA loop of attacks, if our strategy is to always be at the step in front of our adversaries, so that means that we have to be early adopters of new technologies, or at least or at least to understand all the threats and risks related to that. So my peace of mind actually is, let's break out of the hype around the new technologies. Stop reading newspapers, headlines about that, but more advance into research, testing of new technologies, even those that are not obviously at all of the time threats to your specific business. But for example, AI and all these deep fakes are actually threats to the trust. And now the trust is at a challenge anyway with all us remotely working. So basically, a few of the things that I would say is CISO has to be an innovator, early adopter of new technologies. Be an innovator in a sense that you dedicate the time of your team to address these new risks, to experiment, to research. Some traditional measures of management like 70, 20, 10 that Google, for example, adopted years ago is something that we should be all adopting and giving time to our teams to actually get familiar with this. Because if they're familiar with the new technology, new risks, then they can provide added value to the whole process. The other thing is, of course, when we speak specifically about deep fakes, there is also a great progress in detection of deep fakes, but detecting deep fakes is too slow compared to the damage, reputational damage that deep fakes can actually create around specific risks. Prevention is very important, very effective, but again, it is too slow because a deep fake as a mean of countermeasures in marketing can create a damage in a wider sense before anything else of this can actually reduce the risk. So things like certification, assertion of truth are those that can be effective measures. User storytelling when you're educating your users, but not only on users, your partners. For example, in the financial industry, all those that are using electronic know your customer approach, for example, would actually have to focus on all the risks around the potential use of deep fakes to actually abuse the trust in electronic KYC. I would just highlight and close my intervention here that there are scientific studies about the risk from deep fakes. And I would highlight, for example, the Center for Security and Emerging Technologies from Georgetown University published just a month ago their report about what is the reality of the risk around the deep fakes, which actually brings us to the last point to highlight is on the strategic level, think about this as a strategic risk, because dealing with the tactical side only is not going to be effective unless you have a holistic approach, which includes your team, your technologies, your partners, for example, cloud partners that are in the picture of this, and all the other ecosystem for protection.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Victor. So deepfakes should be treated as a, in a strategic level. It's advancing fast. And you said that CISO should be innovative, experiment, and, just research and experiment. That brings us to the next question to Shaik. So all of these, the cyber attackers are getting advanced. Deep fake is getting advanced. What's the skill level gap now in organizations? Are you seeing a skill gap now in terms of cybersecurity skills? Having advanced knowledge of these new things. So give us an assessment of the skills gap and how can companies and organizations address that gap?
Hey, Ray, sorry, thank you for organizing this one, and thanks for the opportunity. And I wanted to say that, due to COVID, as Francisco has mentioned, the offices has expanded actually. So the work from home has given the opportunity for the employees to, work from the wilder spaces of their homes rather than from behind the firewalls. Similarly, the organizations are being running here and there to secure the collaborative workspaces right now, whatever the things. So similarly, in the same lines, the cyber criminals are using this as an opportunity to increase the attacks, since everyone knows now the security has been relaxed in the connectivity and all. So the organizations are finding it very difficult to get and hold the cyber security professionals inside the organizations. As per the data, like World Economic Forum 2019, as of November 2019, there was 68% skill gap in the cyber security professionals. But when we move a semester ahead, so now it is 1400% the skill gap is there. As per the ISC2 data from a survey in 2019 before COVID, it was approximately 4 million, 4.07 million cyber security professionals required. But we all know, like, only cyber is the career, or cyber is the skill which is in high demand even in the COVID situation. So this is kind of a am I audible?
All right. So there is
Yes.
obviously a skill gap, no, Shaik? There is
Yes.
a
So this. Yes. So there is a huge skill gap here, and the best way, as you say, as you asked, like to try to answer your question, the better way to address this skill gap is to have internal trainings done and have the collaboration between industry and academia, so that the continuous stream of skills are available for the industries. On top of it, like have the cross skilling and upskilling done inside the organization, so that the cyber skills are like in like abundance inside the organization, so easily can be adapted the people who understand the organizational dynamics well. The last one, but not the least, is we as the cyber security professionals, we have this responsibility to communicate to the world that like how well the gap can be addressed. We need to create a awareness across the diaspora of academics and the universities, so that like people and the students can adopt cyber as a career. So there is biggest. I'm a program director for a couple of universities in India, wherein like I see that like there is a very less like interest in cyber as a career in the students. So they think it's a rocket science. It is something alien. So we need to create that awareness that like cyber can be easily adapted. It is nothing like kind of a like say the nuclear formula which we need to understand. But we need to make it clear before joining cyber and adapting cyber as a career. So we need to conduct lot many sessions and interact more with the academical world, and to create an interest in the students, so that like they can have that penchant for cyber as a career.
Okay. All right. So thank you, Shaik. Now, Dr.
Thank
Francisco.
you.
So, what's your take on this skills gap? Now, what best practices can you share? Being having worked with Maynilad. So, can you share some best practices?
The skill gap is there, and since this area is moving very fast. I mean, I think it will always be there, no?
Mm,
So I'd like to pick up on something that Shaik said, which I think is very relevant, is that you have to develop your own skills. And that means, because IT security is everybody's responsibility. So, for example, one thing we did in our company is we trained non-IT people sitting in different branches and different offices on the basics of IT security. We have a name for it. We call it C Shield. It's cybersecurity. I forgot what it means, but anyways, it's a program wherein anybody that is interested in IT security, we train them so that they're our first level of response. If somebody has an issue in an office, they can go to them and seek assistance, right? They also do a lot of the awareness campaigns. They participate so that as a colleague, not just IT, they can explain to their own people what IT security means. Just as an example, phishing, right? I mean, you can put any technical solution, but you can't. It will not address phishing. It's really basically awareness and understanding of what to do, what not to do, right? And there are many simple things that can be addressed just by that. Like not doing financial transactions on an open Wi-Fi, right? I mean, as an IT security professional, that may seem very obvious, but people still do that. right? So yeah.
Interesting. No, so training non-IT, no, with security, no, that is an interesting approach. Venkatesh, no, so let's talk about the skill further. No. So Dr. Francisco's case, no, it's training non-IT. No. Does it make sense to outsource security, if you don't have the skill?
That's an interesting question, Ray. I would say that there are some aspects of security that may make sense to be outsourced, and that's for, I would say, three reasons. One is when you have established partners who work with multiple companies, they would have certain playbooks and automations that you can leverage if you are using them. So one reason for having partners is so that you don't have to build all those playbooks and automation by yourself. You can kind of use some of the work that has already been done. The second reason is also, I would say, to leverage the expertise, because having serviced multiple customers, the partners would have certain experience and expertise in dealing with certain kinds of threats. So it's important that we are able to leverage some of those pooled expertise and experience. That's the second reason, I would say. And the third reason, obviously, is, as was mentioned earlier regarding the skill gap, is we need continuity of services. So in many cases, it will be very difficult. I mean, we are not running an organization for security. We are running an organization to meet its business objectives. And if you have a lot of churn happening in your team, that is going to be a pain. So what an external partner sometimes provides is like, it provides you that stopgap or a cushion to be able to ensure that continuity of services. So so in a nutshell, there are certain areas in security which are amenable and conducive to outsourcing. They could be, and this is just my point of view, for example, SIEM alert triaging, which can be where you can leverage playbooks and automations. That's one area. External penetration tests, where like skill assessments, it would be like, some of these areas I feel would be good candidates for outsourcing.
Okay, so there are certain things you can outsource, no? And you can leverage on the expertise of third party. Now, I wanted to, drill on Dr. Francisco's point. So it's, training non-IT in an organization that is building a culture of security awareness. And in my experience here in the Philippines, and also elsewhere, so the target of cyber attacks now are usually the elderly. Those that are, it's a growing market for cyber attackers, the elderly, senior executives that are low tech. Dr. Victor, so what's your take? Cybersecurity awareness across the organization, should it be an organization-wide, culture-wide undertaking?
Thank you, Reynaldo, for this question. It is a very, very important question, particularly this year. What we have concretely undertaken at my organization is to actually have targeted awareness to all business functions, basically along line of the risk management. So, like it has been said before, we are here to assure that organization meets its objectives. So basically, at my role as a CISO, where I sit at the senior management meetings, I always raise issues that are currently issues in a way that other senior managers can actually realize what could that issue relate to their principal risk criteria. So concretely, for example, when we speak about anti-fraud controls with finance departments, we would be aligning specific training for finance people worldwide taking into account user orientation, not cybersecurity orientation, but principally first understanding what are their main current issues, adapting our awareness techniques to actually get closer to their risks, and then actually, like it was mentioned, also talking about playbooks, but also talking about scenarios, concrete scenarios, and what does it mean by user-centric. For example, in the case where the user raises a point about risk, which actually helps addressing that risk later on, and when we take that as a use case for other illustrations, it is always very important to highlight that the user is the hero of the story and not cybersecurity professionals, because cybersecurity professionals, this is our duty to do that. But the user actually is the hero for raising such an issue in the first place, which actually in turn takes on the empathy of users towards being engaged in this process. And that has been a very, very important measure with a lot of effective results.
Okay, good insights, Dr. Victor. Shaik, let me ask you about cybersecurity awareness in the board level. So, what's your observation? Is cybersecurity now a major discussion in the board, in organizations?
Yes, Ray, thank you very much. Really, this is a very important question, actually. So now, due to this change in the new normal, now every board is giving a priority to cybersecurity, and cybersecurity is considered as a business enabler now rather than a disruptor earlier. And they are accommodating in the board discussions, and they are giving a priority in the projects, and they are like incorporating cyber as a key function in the business, actually. So as you said, like business is considering and providing more importance to cyber now than earlier, especially after this COVID. And they are depending heavily on cyber while implementing the major key business decisions.
All right, so it is now a business enabler. No, it's not a cost.
Yes.
Already an enabler. No? So we have discussed, the implications of COVID, no, and skills gap. Dr. Francisco, let me circle back to you. No? So, how do you see cybersecurity now? No? What's the future of cybersecurity? Post pandemic. No? What's going to be out there?
Well, before I answer that, I let me just touch on the earlier point by Shaik, and I found it. I just give you a very concrete example. I think raising awareness, and also what you said, Ray, regarding that the more elderly are usually the victims, and not only the elderly, but the higher ups, the higher executives are actually the targets, right? And we did this exercise, and we went to our Mancom and said, okay, who thinks that IT security and hacks are an IT problem? And several actually raised their hand, right? And then we did an exercise, which we played a video of as if a company got hacked, right? And you can see that actually a lot of the work really is discussing with the regulator, discussing with the National Privacy Commission, discussing with the public, right? Containing it so that people don't panic, right? So after that, we said, whose responsibility does it seem to be, right? So the answer is we're all in this together. So now one of the things we do is actually exercise that. Every year we simulate as if we have a hack in some facility without any announcement, and we simulate it as if it's propagating until it reaches the Mancom level and see how we react. Because with everything, practice makes perfect. And unless you practice it, you're going to be scrambling when this thing happens, right? So definitely IT security, of course, it's the job of the CISO, but it goes really much more beyond that.
Interesting.
For your other question, I'll let the chance for some other person to speak.
Yeah, that's interesting, Dr. Francisco. So, making this, a senior executive involvement. So everyone should be involved. All right.
Yeah,
so
you have to get their buy-in. Yeah.
All right. So I'll ask this question for all of you gentlemen. So Venkatesh, no, let's start with you. So again, we have discussed the implications of COVID now, no, work from home, skills gap. What is going to be the future of cybersecurity? Where is this intersecting with? What's going to happen post COVID? So Venkatesh.
Sure. I actually see three trends that are both challenges as well as opportunities. And we have covered some of them earlier, but I'll just pick three, which are different from what we have spoken. One of them is the integration of IT and OT, the IT OT convergence as it's called. And OT is actually operational technology, which is systems in factories. Previously, factories were air gapped, but now with a lot of digitization happening and digital transformation of organizations, the factory systems are getting integrated more and more with IT systems, and in many cases also with the cloud. And that poses new challenges because previously what was a well-contained zone is now become integrated, and all the attacks would now start spreading into the factory systems. The implications of these are enormous because it's not a question of just some loss of data. We could be talking about loss of lives. We could be talking about millions of dollars when factory systems are disrupted. So that's one trend, we have to watch out and be very careful, during these integrations, which are important, but we have to be very careful when we are planning these integrations. The second thing is what is happening in the last few years is this vanishing corporate perimeter. And previously, all our crown jewels and assets were there in the data center, and all you had to do was to protect the data center. But now, where are your assets today in this new world? You could have a website somewhere. You could have a SaaS application like a Salesforce, again, somewhere in the cloud. You could be developing certain digital applications, say in an Azure or an Amazon. You could have data which is spread all over. So it's no longer in the data center. It's everywhere what you want to access. And who are the people who want to access it? It's no longer the people who just were coming into your office. It could be users who are there in the offices. It could be users who are at home. It could be users who are anywhere in the world. And it could be users using any device. And it could not just be users, it could be sensors, IoT systems talking to applications. So this heterogeneity of this any-to-any setup, right? Subjects talking to objects. We need to have a completely different paradigm by which we are going to service this particular relationship in security. So that's going to, and this Ray is going to happen in the next 3 to 4 years. There are a lot of technologies, there is zero trust, etc. coming in, not still fully mature, but talk to me 4 years down the line, many of this would be mainstream. So that is the second other trend which I'm seeing. And the third is basically privacy of individuals. With a lot of, because privacy I'm mentioning because two things are happening now. Organizations are using and mining a lot of customer information to be able to service the customer better. They call it 360-degree customer view. So there is a lot of profiling of customer information, a lot of analytics happening on customer data. So that's one part of it. And on other side of the equation, we have got strong regulations coming, which are already in place in many countries across the globe, which want to make sure that there is adequate governance. So what is the need of the hour basically is to have an appropriate, robust privacy framework that can take care of this challenge. So these are, I would say, three top trends which I'm seeing going into the future.
Okay, those are really insightful, Venkatesh. There's a question here from the audience, no, and I'd like to direct this to Dr. Viktor. Are deep fakes illegal? No? How to differentiate it with movie visual and special effects technology? A question from the audience, Mr. Izzuddin Abdullah.
Oh, yes, that's a very important question. A legal framework to prevent misinformation actually is being now very trendy worldwide and addressed in many forums, and different countries and regions are addressing that. But like I mentioned earlier, a legal framework is one control, which is actually also coming late to prevent damage that could be done with deepfakes. So yes, we have seen some of the legal advances into that area, notably related to the personal data protection and privacy protection. For example, in Europe, we have alignment with the general data protection regulation, or in the United States and elsewhere in the world. But more than that, I think what is important is the adoption of prevention measures by companies, global companies that actually disseminate information. And you know that I'm talking about large companies like Facebook, Google, Twitter, and other media companies. Obviously, they are doing a lot, and they are doing a lot to attempt to stop deep fakes of propagation, or, for example, inserting radioactive data in the data sets so that basically that could be detected easily. So the asymmetric approach of reducing the cost of detection and increasing the cost of production of deepfakes is one of the approaches actually that is being tackled these days, I would say, for that specific area. But I think if I can make a parallel to your previous question about what we can do to address the emerging risk is, I would say, the professionals like us should actually leverage these new technologies and empower further our teams. For example, I would rather see things like augmented intelligence being used to actually supplement capacity gaps. Like Venkatesh mentioned, for example, the increase of OT, IoT. So basically we have an exponential increase in the amount of data that is actually coming and signals are coming. So if that amount of data is not going to overwhelm our teams, but rather to be filtered by automation so that only those that are pertinent for the risk could actually be used to address, then we're not talking about super cybersecurity people of the future, you know, but actually those that are able to address this growing use of data. With coming technologies like 5G, with Starlinks covering global internet, if we in the near future have 8 billion people on the internet, that's going to be a lot of data and a lot of people to actually work with to maintain the trust. So augmented intelligence, distributed trust is also an effective measure of actually addressing trust assertion across the globe at different time scales and a different proliferation of internets. I'm not talking only about distributed ledger and blockchain technologies, but also other technologies in this area, like distributed databases and distributed file systems across the low latency networks like 5G, for example.
Yeah, interesting view of the future. Now, so Shaik, now some last points. Now, so what's your view of the future, and how do we prepare for that?
The threat vectors are increasing, and accordingly, we need to have the cyber automation and orchestration adapted. Parallelly, like I again believe in Venkatesh, the statement of bringing in the OT and IT combined and correlated, so that like the things are in place.
All right. So, Dr. Francisco, some last words. Now, what's your view of the future, and how do we prepare?
Well, I mean, I think this will always be a cat and mouse game. I mean, it's on one hand the hackers and the people trying to breach, and on the other hand those trying to protect. Right? Technologies will evolve, but we all have to be, keeping abreast, because that's the way it is. We will never be ahead, because it changes very, very fast.
Okay, interesting. So thank you, gentlemen, for those insights. No? So Bhavana, I will turn you over. So I'm leaving my deep fake. It's actually a deep fake now. No? Speaking, right, Bhavana. So I'll turn this over to you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very
Ray.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you
Bhavana.
so
very
much,
much, sir.
Francisco, Ray, Venkatesh, Shaik, and Dr. Victor. Thank you so much for your time.